Hey, welcome back to the Book of Dad Radio Show. I'm Dr. Robert Benson. As always, before we get started, we want to say thank you to Jehovah. Thank Him for His Son, Jesus Christ. Thank Him for our families. Thank Him for work and our ability to do the things we're able to do. Book of Dad Radio Show with my main man, Eddie G. What's up, Eddie?
What's up, sir? How you feel?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. It's good to see you, as usual.
Hey, I'm still alive.
Yes, you are. Hey, but you know that's an interesting segue into what we want to talk about. I mean, for the last year and a half, we've been inundated and kind of constrained by COVID-19 and some of the things that have surrounded it. But today we're going to talk a little bit about it and the fact that we're really making this concerted push, if you will, to get back to normal. Who better to talk to about that too than a regular contributor that we have on the Book of Dad Radio Show, who's an educator, and we don't steal thunder. We're going to let her come right in and say hello to Dr. Shanessa Fenner. Hey, Dr. Fenner, what's happening?
Hey, how you guys doing? I'm doing great.
Mm-hmm.
Great to have you on.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thanks for asking me to be a guest on your show.
Well, we didn't ask you. You asked me.
Wow. No, you didn't.
Hey, Dr. Fenner, how on earth have you been?
I have been doing great. You know, I'm a principal of an elementary school, pre-K through 5, and I've been leading, through this pandemic, making sure that everyone, first and foremost, stays healthy and safe and follow all protocols and rules, wear your mask over your nose and your mouth, stay 6 feet away from one another, wash your hands for at least 20 seconds, making sure that we don't have any kinds of large groups together in an assembly style, don't want any kind of super spreader activity, which is one of the terms that I like to use on a frequent basis, but just trying to make sure that we first and foremost stay safe. And then number 2, we educate our babies. We've been out of school, of course, for a while, and then we got back to school last year for the last 9 weeks. So we're trying to get everybody, we're meeting the babies where they are, academically, because they have missed school. So we're meeting them where they are, and we're working in increments to bring them up to where they need to be, because, of course, in May, they will still take their end of grade tests. So we're still charged with educating the babies, of course, through this pandemic.
It's very interesting you mentioned that, because I was going to ask what tools, or were they going to adjust the tools for assessment at the various gateways, if you will, within the educational process. So, but outside of all that, I want to get back and talk to you a little bit about what you've been up to. I know you've had to make some changes and some adjustments and such surrounding education, but I know you do other things besides education. So share with our audience what you've been up to, because you've been a regular contributor to the Book of Dad Radio Show for a few years now. So update us on what you've been up to.
Okay, well, first and foremost, I have a TV show as well, but I have not been taping, Robert, due to COVID, because, of course, whenever you tape, you have to go in the studio. You can't wear your mask. You're sitting close to one another. So I talked with the director a couple weeks ago, and he was like, do you feel safe with taping? And I told him no. So my show, of course, I still have it, but we haven't been taping due to protocol. So what will probably happen is, as the rates go down and I feel a little bit more comfortable, I will start, of course, back taping my show, which is called The Bronco Exchange. It comes on Channel 7. And I have various people come in, various speakers, politicians, educators. I mean, you name it. I have them in, and we talk about, various topics of politics, government, education. I have musicians on, entertainers. I mean, you name it. We talk about it, the whole gamut of things. So I'm waiting, of course, like I said, for those COVID statistics to go down, before we start back taping. Then, of course, I still write for 12 publications. So, of course, nothing changes with that. I still interview people, still write for the 12 publications, still meet interesting people. We talk about everything. So that's still something that takes place. So those are the things that keep me very busy, along with my principalship. So those are the main things that I'm doing, at this time.
Interesting. And the thing, now we can circle back to education, because I see a number of different ways that your genius or your orchestration ability, if you will, comes into play surrounding all these different things that you have to do. But the one thing I would wonder or want to know if there's any data that's produced that shows where parental engagement has increased or such. Because I mean, they almost have to now by default because of the way that things are these days.
Mhm. Well, as far as parental involvement, Robert, I have a Title I school, so parental
Mhm.
involvement has never been very high for me.
Exactly.
Of course, my staff and I, we sit and we collaborate, have sit meetings, and think about ways to engage parents. And yes, the parents will come and engage. But as far as me having that high percentage, Robert, that I would like, no. Mm-mm. But I would love to. I'm very big on communication. I call parents. We send out parent link messages and newsletters. We're always displaying things on the website. Right now, we're having a lot of virtual events for the parents to be a part of, and pre-pandemic, we would have invite the parents to school to do things, of course, in person and have lunch with the babies to be volunteers at school. So we're always collaborating, Robert, to think of ways to engage parents. I'm the kind of principal that I believe in the village concept. It takes a
Mhm.
village to raise our babies. And I'm always thinking of ways that we can, of course, invite them in to become a part of their children's learning. We have parent nights and parent workshops. Whenever we have parent nights, we're always making sure that the parents are in the role of the student. And so our teachers are teaching some of those standards to the parents like they do to the babies, so that at night the parents can assist their children when they do homework as well. So we're just trying to make sure that we can incorporate parents as much as we can with everything that we do, so that they can help, because everybody plays a role, Robert, when it comes to babies learning. The
Right.
parents have their role, my teachers have their role, me as the principal, we have our role. And of course, I tell the babies all the time, you all play a role too in your education. So everybody has a piece of that pie that I talk about, and that responsibility in educating our babies.
Well, Dr. Fenner, a quick question I have is when we were dealing with virtual learning, did you find any pros to that? I know there were pros and cons to each style, but did you find any benefits to virtual learning?
Yes, I did. I found that some students preferred virtual learning versus person to person. And then I also found out some preferred in person versus virtual learning. Now, when it comes to virtual learning, we did have many students who logged on, but we also had students who did not log on. I would have to make phone calls. The teachers would have to make phone calls to say, hey, where's Ed today? We haven't seen him for the last couple of days, so, you reach out to the parents and see why Ed hasn't logged on, so, virtual learning has its pros and cons. We still have a virtual school that, of course, that we have babies at this year as well. But there were various pros and cons to virtual learning. Also, in the morning, we would make sure that those major blocks, like the reading and math blocks, those major ones were taught in the morning, because sometimes after lunch, there were students who did not log back on. So you want to make sure that those major blocks, the reading, the math, and the science and all, especially for fifth grade, being that the fifth graders, of course, they have reading, math, and science in the grade. So you want to make sure that those major blocks, Ed, were taught in the morning.
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, because I would wonder how you went about actually measuring those things, and obviously it would seem to be a little easier because you have the information technology right at your fingertips and things like that. But
Yes.
uh, now to kind of spin off Ed's excellent question, my question would be, is how stringent are we as far as the attendance is going? Has there been a lax in maintaining that attendance standard, if you will, because everything is relatively new? I mean, we've been in this posture for a good year and a half, but I'm just wondering, has any adjustments been made to how we're adjudicating, making sure that students attend, for lack of a better term?
Yes, we still have a very stringent attendance policy. My social worker will still make sure that she make sure that the notification letters of students who are missing many days, those are still, signed and given out as well. So yes, we do make sure that, attendance is very key. My
Hmm.
teachers make phone calls. I make phone calls. The social worker makes phone calls. It is imperative now, Rob, that by us being back, we have a lot of catching up to do, Rob. So every minute
Hmm.
counts. So yes, attendance is very key right now, being that the babies have been out for a while now and we're playing catch up. So yes, it's very mandatory. It's very key. And yes, I'm very, very strong about attendance because I want my babies to do well. I want them to grow. So yes, that is something that is a priority at my school.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I think another dynamic would have to come into play with that as well, and that's computer competency or literacy surrounding some of the parents because you do have a Title I school. But
Hmm.
we're going to talk more about this and other topics when we get right back. This is Dr. Robert Benson with my main man Eddie G and Dr. Shanessa Fenner, and we'll be right back.
See why listeners from over 150 countries around the world follow the Book of Dad radio show. Join Dr. Robert Benson and Eddie G as they chat with special guests who share their stories and information that will change your life. Watch and listen on lifeandspiritonline.com or subscribe to the Book of Dad radio show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcast. Brought to you by the NASCA Network.
Hey, welcome back to the Book of Dad radio show with Dr. Robert Benson and me, Eddie G. And today we have special guest, Dr. Shanessa Fenner, who is giving us some insight on the opportunities and the situation in our schools today. I had a quick question, Doctor, and it is about technology. As far as when the COVID situation took hold and our babies, as you say, had to attend school from home, did you have an issue with technology as far as, children being able to have internet as well as a computer? Or did they use phones, or what was the situation for the most part?
That's a good question, Ed. Cumberland County Schools made sure that they had plenty of laptops and hotspots for our babies. So, of course, our babies were able, their parents were able to come and pick up laptops as well as hotspots. So that worked out very well. We wanted to make sure that they had everything they needed in order, to be able to do their work, to be able to get their learning and connect with their teachers and things of that nature. So it worked out very well, and we did whatever we had to do. If we had to go drop a laptop off on someone's porch, we did that, whatever we had to do, whether it was the social worker, whether they came to the school to pick it up, we made sure that everybody had the laptops and the hotspots that they needed. And one thing, Ed and Rob, that I learned about, virtual learning is that whenever you go through something like this, a pandemic, that's something that, we've never, ever been a part of. You learn all kinds of things, You
Yeah.
learn that everybody does not have internet, everybody does not have a laptop. Some people are staying with their grandparents or somewhere else, So, that's why you have to have those conversations and form the relationships with your families and the parents at school, to see, the situation, how we can accommodate it, to make sure that our babies receive the learning that they do. So virtual learning, of course, when we went through the pandemic and everything, everybody now gets an A+ when it comes to online teaching. Okay, we learned all kinds of tips and skills and all tricks of the trade and all to get the information to the babies and all. My teachers learned all kind of programs and different things that they could use. So it was really everybody, participated in and had basically what I call, lifelong learning. We learned so much during this pandemic, which would prepare us, in case something like this were to ever happen again. We would definitely be ready.
Well, it's another great situation. I mean, and to me, just about anything that you do is going to impact education in some way. So education is kind of a leader, if you will, in cutting edge situations and how to adapt to different problems or what have you. But I want to circle back to taking care of the babies because, again, you have a Title I school. And for a lot of those children and those families, the lunch and school and feeding programs at those schools is essential for those children. So when a lot of the kids aren't able to come to school and get that breakfast and lunch or that snack in the afternoon, that changes the dynamic significantly as far as their nutrition is concerned. Now, I know there's a push to have them back in the bricks and mortar, but during the time when they were primarily in this virtual environment, were you making adjustments to make sure they were fed? And what was the procedures, or did you guys do anything in addition to what you normally did?
Oh, yes, Robert. That's a great question. First, I like to say that my school was a feeding site. So the parents would come every day at a certain time, to pick up the meals, and they picked them up and the babies ate. I mean, the whole time, there was not at any time that the babies were not allowed and were not fed. Robert, cafeteria staff made sure, they were out there passing out. Even my custodians would also help passing out as well. But yes, my school was a feeding site, and the parents would line up. And yes, they would come, and those meals were served and given out at a certain time every day. And yes, everybody ate. No one went hungry. So that was something that, really made me feel good. Now, my school, of course, is Title I, and the babies are back in school. So at my school, they receive breakfast and lunch at no charge. So, of course, they eat well. We feed them, we love on them, we teach them, we make sure they're safe and all, and we just love on them because they're back, and they're very excited to be back at school. And yes, we have different protocols and all, but they're very excited to be back. We're happy to have them back, but yes, they're well fed and well taken care of.
Outstanding.
Well, two things. One is in Delaware, what they did was they had a bus that came around, just like, the bus that would pick up kids to go to school. And it would come around at certain times, and it would drop off lunches for the kids. And maybe they would give you lunches for the week or lunches for a couple of days. So it was really an effective program. The other thing is, explain to our audience, what is a Title I school?
Okay. Also, Ed, I like to touch base on what you just said. And yes, we did have buses that went around as well to drop off lunches, sweetie. So yes, we did. A Title I school is a school that receives federal funds. At my school, I have low socioeconomic students. So we receive monies, of course, and I first and foremost use the money to hire personnel, okay? I use my money always first and foremost for personnel. I need teachers to teach my babies. So my Title I funds are first and foremost used for personnel. After I make sure that my babies have the teachers in the room and have all the adequate personnel that they need, then I use the rest of the money. I meet with the SIT team and my teachers, and we discuss any kind of educational equipment that they may need, any kind of resources, any kind of programs. Teachers always want to order stuff, and they always want materials and different programs or different things that they like to use. So then we sit and collaboratively discuss, what they would like to have. We make sure that it aligns with our school improvement plan, because of course every school has a school improvement plan where they're working on goals, and there's a certain kind of achievement and growth that each school wants to produce. So we make sure that these materials and all go along with our school improvement plan. And then, like I said, first and foremost is for personnel, and then after that is for whatever the school needs that's going to make our teachers and babies be very successful.
That's a great point. I mean, I love the fact that, there's this recognition out there that, I don't want to sound corny, but children are the future. If we don't take care of them now, we won't have a future. I mean, things could be pretty bad if we don't put stuff in place that we're doing right now to take care of them. But speaking of that, and then there's these other social and behavioral things that come into play. Usually kids deal with bullying in schools. And while they aren't dealing with bullying as much now, because they're home, there's another behavioral thing they have to deal with the dynamics at home. I know there was a couple studies done where people were actually talking about the spike in domestic violence and those types of things, and abuses and those types of things, because people were caught between or couldn't get outside the house or couldn't get from under the roof. Are you noticing any differences in your children's behavior because of because they could possibly have been subject to that type of behavior or those types of environments when they come back to school? And speaking of that, how anxious are they to get back into bullying other students? Are they happier to just kind of deal with each other, or is that alpha male syndrome, if you will, kicking back in like as soon as they get through the door?
I would be happy to say that when they first got back to school, Robert, we didn't have a lot of issues. Everybody was trying to get back. They were excited and trying to get back into the swing of things. Now, the last couple of weeks, my discipline has picked up. I've been having a lot of he says, she say, she don't like me, she wants to fight me, things of that nature. So my assistant principal and I, we have been pulling the students and having conversations with them. And then of course, after I conversate with them, I make a phone call to the parents as well, because I want the parents to know what's going on. And then I make sure that they know what I said to their child, and that, if this continues, there are going to be consequences and repercussions. I always want to make that sure. I want everybody to be on the same page so that when things kick off, nobody won't be surprised. Okay. So I can say that there has been a reduction in discipline since we've been back. I think because there's an excitement to be back. And then, of course, we're trying to make up for lost time and pick up, on that learning that they've lost, So it has decreased. Now, as far as when you were talking about domestic violence and all, I did interview someone the other day from our Phoenix Center here, which is a rape crisis and sexual assaults center. I did interview someone for one of the publications that I write for, and she did tell me that during COVID, that the sexual assaults, of course, declined, but the domestic violent cases, they increased because everybody was, of course, inside together with children, jobs and stuff. Job situations were different and people were going crazy. And she did mention that there were more violent behaviors during COVID. So that was something that we discussed in the interview that I did. And I've already written the article and submitted it. But speaking of that, yes, during COVID, domestic violence, was very high. And like she said, the crimes and all were more violent than ever.
I see. Hey, well, this is Book of Dad Radio Show. I'm Dr. Robert Benson with my main man, Eddie G, and Dr. Shanessa Fenner, who is an expert in the subject of education. And we need professionals like her, especially now as we try to get back to what Ed would say is a new normal. But we're going to take a quick break, Book of Dad Radio Show, and we'll be right back.
You have something special. You have greatness in you. Hello, I'm Les Brown, Mrs. Mamie Brown's baby boy. I want you to spread the word to your family members and friends to listen to LesBrownGreatnessRadio.com. Absolutely. And let me share with you why we're going to be focusing on positive things, because whatever you focus on the longest becomes the strongest. And now more than ever, when the suicide rate has increased over 33%, when the suicide rate of young children between 5 and 11 has doubled, people feeling hopeless and stressed out and powerless, we need programming that can bring out the greatness in them. And that's what we will be focused on. When you listen, it will be an experience that will transform your life. LesBrownGreatnessRadio.com. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Hey, and we're right back. Book of Dad Radio Show with Dr. Robert Benson. Be sure to get us where you get your podcast and check us out, because as I always say, we have great topics and great guests. As we have today, we have the great guest of Dr. Shanessa Fenner, a principal at a Title I school, which we understand now what Title I is. But within all the juggling that we're talking about and all the things that are new, that are becoming the new norm, if you will, surrounding COVID, now there's some other stuff that we'd like to pick Dr. Fenner's brain on, as far as from a procedural and a nuts and bolts getting it done standpoint. So we want to talk to her and get her to speak a little bit to some of the challenges the teachers are facing or are dealing with, as far as their techniques and things that they may have to circle back on, if you will, as far as making sure that the lessons are getting taught effectively. Dr. Fenner.
Mm-hmm. Well, first and foremost, Robert and Ed, in May, our third, fourth, and fifth grade babies were taking end of grade tests. So first and foremost, my teachers have to make sure, that they follow the Common Core standards, the pacing, make sure they're using these resources and things, because no matter what, the babies are going to be given that end of grade test on their grade level. But see, by us being out of school for quite some time, my teachers are having to go back and pick up on those skills from the previous 1 or 2 grades that the babies are lacking. So it's like they're doing 2 things at the same time. Okay. So what is happening a lot at my school? I believe in the power of small group instruction. Okay. Small group instruction is effective. The teachers have a small group. They're focusing on the needs of the babies, and they're meeting them where they are. and they're making sure, during this time, they're catching them up where they need to be. So there's a lot of small group instruction, Ed and Robert, going on at my school, because as I said, my teachers are playing catch up. Okay, because they're catching up because the babies have missed school. So they're still making sure that they teach them on their grade level, with the standards that they need to, but they're having to go back, to make sure that there's certain skills that they need to know. So they're doing, like I said, two things at the same time, and they're doing a great job of it. I have remediation blocks also built into the schedule. A lot of small group instruction is going on. We still, of course, they do whole group instruction, but then, of course, they break out into the small group instruction. They're spending a lot of one-on-one time with the babies. I've also got remediation teachers in my school who either push in or pull out, and they do small groups as well. And of course, the small groups are flexible. They're always changing, because the baby's needs change. They, of course, will learn a skill and do well on it and be reassessed. And then, of course, it's on to the next skill that they may need help on. So it's a continuous process, but we're moving like synchronized swimmers, doing what we have to do. But we have to make sure that there's a lot of collaboration going on. We use a lot of research, effective strategies, We do a lot of sharing, a lot of collegiality, in PLCs and grade level planning. So things are going well. I also have two wonderful instructional coaches, and they also push in or pull out small groups as well. So everybody's working together to get the babies to where they need to be.
Outstanding.
Now, when it comes to the small groups, was that more difficult? Because when you're in a COVID situation and you're doing online teaching, I'll use an example. So say as a teacher, I'm in the class and I'm going over a subject matter. Well, sometimes the kids might be doing some writing and I can go to that one student who's not really getting it, and I can talk to that student while the other ones are continuing to do what they do. Is that a little bit harder virtually, where it's not a distraction to the other students?
Yes, that's a good question, Ed. When we did virtual, we would have what's called little breakout rooms. So what would happen is the teacher, of course, I made sure every teacher had an instructional assistant with her in the virtual room. So the instructional assistant would stay with the main group while they're working. The teacher would go in another breakout room, which is another link with that one child, and would work one-on-one with that child. So that's called a breakout room. So that's how that would happen. So the babies that were doing that writing assignment that you're talking about, that teacher assistant was with them, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to do, while the teacher was in another breakout room with her and the child by themselves. So that's how that worked when we were virtual.
It's interesting you mention all that, because what I would like to know now is that most school systems or boards or systems are run by boards. How has what is the body language been, so to speak, as far as school board meetings and these types of things? Is there a push for anything in particular? Are we seeing a trend towards funding in different areas, or are things pretty much staying the same? I mean, I know that's kind of like not a real good question, because I know there are some differences, but I really would like to know is what is the kind of the trend right now towards boards as far as they're trying to run these school systems now?
Well, our board, I think they pretty much work together. Everybody has their opinions, of course, and I think that they all tried to come to a happy medium. But I think the push, of course, first and foremost for our babies to be safe, okay, to be in that safe environment. And then, of course, to make sure that effective learning takes place and that we catch our babies up to where they need to be. So I think that when it comes to our board, that they are on board with, number one, keeping the babies safe and making sure that they're educated, no matter what. And we're going to do whatever we have to do by any means necessary to get them to where they need to be.
Absolutely. But Dr. Fenner, it's great for you to join us today, but let's give you a minute or two and offer up some recommendations for others in your position or others that are in the education profession, things that you've seen that you would say, okay, lessons learned or lesson learned. What would you recommend to your colleagues out there as far as trying to get back to the new normal, as it were?
Okay. I would first and foremost tell them to take a deep breath and to make sure that they're taking time, to make sure that their mental well-being is fine. As a principal, we have so much on our shoulders, and And I've been very concerned, Robin and Ed, about the mental well-being of my teachers. It has been very challenging for them. It's been very hard. So I spend a lot of evenings on the phone with them. I spend a lot of days talking with them one-on-one. Many of them are overwhelmed. They're doing the best that they can. So I find myself constantly trying to make sure they're okay, but in turn, I have to make sure I'm okay too, because the buck stops at me by being the principal.
Yeah.
So my advice would be to make sure principals who listening to me, make sure you take care of yourself first, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else.
Outstanding. Okay, so let's circle back out to you outside of bricks and mortar, outside of being the principal. What's going on with you? What's coming up next for you?
Well, that's a good question. I would like to get back to taping my TV show. I would like to get back to doing some more radio things, because I'm a radio personality as well. And I
Yeah.
just like to get back into community, Rob, and just be this multifaceted, go-getting person, that I've always been. I used to prior to COVID, I would be on the radio and reading to the blind and visually impaired individuals. I like to read the local newspaper to them. So those are the kinds of things that I really, really want to get back into. And of course I will when the COVID metrics go down. But I just want to get back into community, be very involved, talk to people, catch up, and just, do all those great things that I always say that we're supposed to do. I always say that, we were placed here on earth to do great things, and that's what I intend on doing, great things.
Wow. So we appreciate that. We appreciate what you're doing with our babies, all the things that you do. Now I know last time you were on the show was a couple years ago. And I see that you're still dedicated to what you're going to do. It looks like you're going to do it forever. You're not going to let the kids down. And that's what they need. They need dedicated people who really believe in helping them succeed.
Yeah, that's a
And
big
that's
thank
what
you,
they
Dr.
have.
Fenner. That's right.
Thank you.
That's
I
a huge
love my
thank you.
babies. Thank you. I love my babies. And like I said, I will be there for them. And I'm expecting great things from them. And they know it. And we do all that we can to make sure they're successful, And we just love them. And we're going to, love on them and give them whatever they need.
Absolutely. Here, here. And you can always count on us at the Book of Dad radio show, like we can count on you, a regular contributor, Dr. Fenner. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a distinct pleasure having you on and talking with you today. But on the Book of Dad radio show, we've always had some great guests and great people, join us. So today I want to just kind of say we Godspeed and rest in peace to Sarah Dash, the great singer who sang with Patti LaBelle. She was on our show recently and she passed away, but we loved her. She was great. And Ed and I both communicated with her regularly, even after she was on the show. So what a great person, and rest in peace to Sarah Dash. Okay. With that, we're going to close out the show with a quote, as we always do. And today's quote is simply this, is don't miss the opportunity to write your own story because you're reading someone else's. It's Book of Dad radio show. I'm Dr. Robert Benson, and we'll talk to you next time.